I was born here. My father fought for this country in the Great War. We believed the speeches would end once order was restored, that the shouting would quiet, that the uniforms would go away. But one day I realized something had shifted. Not all at once, just enough that when I spoke, I felt out of place in my own city. When did this stop feeling like home? That voice isn't American. That was Germany, early 1930s. And that question, that one is very much ours. Hey everyone, I'm Scott Layton. Welcome back to my expat life here on the Renaissance Spirit. This is episode 2 of A Polymath's Guide to the Age of Polycrisis, when home no longer feels like home, exile, belonging, and the lure of authoritarianism. I'm walking today through the streets of Tirana, a city that knows occupation, dictatorship, propaganda, and collapse far better than most Americans ever will. And as Albania prepares its cafes for another quiet afternoon, I find myself asking a question I never imagined I'd ask at this stage of my life. How do you celebrate 250 years of a country when you no longer recognize what it's becoming? This year marks America's semi-quincentennial, 250 years since its founding. And yet, I'm not there. I didn't leave for adventure. I didn't leave for novelty. I left because staying began to feel like complicity or suffocation. And today, I want to talk honestly about that feeling. Let me say this clearly, before anyone stops listening. America is not Nazi Germany. This is not 1933. We are not living under a totalitarian state, but, and this matters, history doesn't repeat itself. It rhymes, and refusing to study those rhymes is how people sleepwalk into disaster. This episode is not about name-calling. It's about patterns of human behavior under fear. Here's the uncomfortable truth history teaches us. Most Germans who supported Nazism were not monsters. They were frightened, humiliated, economically crushed, socially disoriented after World War I. Hyperinflation wiped out savings, national pride collapsed. Democratic institutions felt weak and chaotic. The Nazi Party didn't rise on hatred alone. It rose on belonging. It offered identity over confusion, certainty over doubt, strength over humiliation, and most crucially, it told people they were good and others were to blame. This isn't an excuse, justification, or defense, just a historical observation. Now let's talk about the United States. Roughly 20 to 25% of Americans align strongly with MAGA ideology. That's not a fringe. That's millions of people. And if your explanation is simply, they're stupid, or they're evil, you are missing the point and repeating history's mistakes. Many MAGA supporters feel economically abandoned, culturally humiliated, politically invisible. They don't trust institutions because institutions failed them. And then came Donald Trump. Trump didn't create the fear. He named it and weaponized it. He offered certainty instead of complexity, loyalty instead of ethics, power instead of accountability. Authoritarian movements don't begin with violence. They begin with belonging. Here's the part no one talks about. When a country shifts ideologically, nonconformity becomes exhausting. You self-edit. You withdraw. You stop recognizing your neighbors. Eventually, you feel like a foreigner before you ever leave. That was my experience. Not fear of arrest, not persecution, but a slow, grinding realization that the values I was taught were no longer the values being celebrated. So I left, not just in anger, but in grief. Exile, even voluntary exile, is not freedom, it's distance, and distance gives perspective. From here in Tirana, America looks loud, anxious, unmoored, not evil, not lost forever, but dangerously allergic to self-reflection. So how do we live in a polycrisis where we don't fit in, we can't look away, and we refuse to surrender our ethics? Here's what history, philosophy, and Stoicism agree on. Do not confuse belonging with righteousness. Do not let fear outsource your morality. Do not dehumanize, even when others do. The opposite of authoritarianism is not chaos, it's conscience. You cope by staying grounded in reason, practicing compassion without naivety, finding community without surrendering ethics, and sometimes by walking away long enough to remember who you are. So how do I feel about America turning 250? I don't feel like celebrating. I feel like witnessing, because loving a country doesn't mean applauding it. It means telling it the truth. And maybe, just maybe, this is what patriotism looks like now. Not fireworks, not slogans, but moral courage. Thank you for walking with me. Living the Renaissance spirit means engaging history not as nostalgia, but as responsibility. Our work is a message to posterity. With wisdom, we didn't look away. I didn't look away. That's how I want to be judged. In this moment of polycrisis and choice, how do you want to be judged? Because our actions now are someone else's history. How will you be remembered?